Imagine for a moment someone created a perfect copy of your mind. Every memory, every fear, every thought you've ever had, every piece of you. And then destroy the original. Would you still be alive? Most people think that the terror in SOMA are its monsters. Well, I'm here to tell you it's not. It's the idea of hope. The idea of hope being taken away. Well, hello everyone. My name is Falcon and welcome to What Am I Watching? Today we are talking about one of my personal favorites, SOMA. So turn off the lights. Stay a while. Let's learn a few things together, shall we? SOMA is one of the few horror games that become more disturbing the longer you think about it. Not because of the jump scares, and not because of its gore, and honestly, not even because of the monsters. It becomes disturbing because of what it quietly says about humanity, about consciousness, identity, and death, and the desperate need that human beings have to believe that we can somehow escape it. Without spoiling too much initially, SOMA follows Simon Jarrett, a man living in Toronto after suffering a severe brain trauma from a car accident. He undergoes an experimental brain scan and wakes up over 100 years in the future inside of an underwater research facility known as Pathos 2. Hereon, humanity is already gone. The Earth is effectively dead, and what remains are broken machines, damaged artificial intelligences, and people whose minds have been copied into technology they were never meant to inhabit. And from the very beginning, something feels deeply wrong. Not just visually, but emotionally. It's existential. One thing I really need to mention before going further into SOMA are the transmission videos. Because honestly, they completely changed how I looked at this world. If you've played the game but you've never seen them, they're essentially short live-action videos set before the game. And what they do so well is to humanitize Pathos 2 before everything fully collapses. You see people trying to stay calm, trying to stay professional, trying to pretend things are still normal, all the time even though the world above them is already dead. Just another thing that makes SOMA so painful. The apocalypse here has already happened. There's no stopping it. There's no hint at a heroic victory. And there's no saving Earth. Humanity lost before the game even started. And yet these people, they keep going. They still work, still talk, still argue. They still joke with each other. Because what else are they supposed to do? The transmission videos make Pathos 2 feel real. Not like a video game level. Not like a sci-fi setting. It feels like a graveyard that still has people walking around inside of it. And when you go through the game after watching them, every hallway just feels sadder than it did before. Every abandoned room feels heavier. Because now you understand. You understand that people actually lived here. SOMA is filled with monsters. But the real horror is in realizing this place used to be alive. The first thing SOMA does incredibly well is its atmosphere. The game feels lonely in a way that very few horror games do. The ocean in SOMA does not feel mysterious. It feels dead, abandoned, like everything had already ended a long time before you had arrived. And the sound design reinforces that constantly. Metal groaning under pressure, distant mechanical noises, the sound of water pressing against structures that feel like they're barely holding together. Even silence in this game feels oppressive. And then there are the monsters. But what makes SOMA's monsters so effective is not their appearance. Although I'm gonna hand it to the designers. You guys did a wonderful job. But what truly makes them scary, it's what they are. Most horror games use monsters as obstacles. SOMA uses them as warnings. Because nearly every creature in this game, well, they were once human too, or at least something close to it. They're broken consciousnesses, fragments of identity trapped inside of machines and decaying flesh. Some barely understand what they've become. Others, they're suffering endlessly. And SOMA forces you to realize something horrifying very early. Human consciousness and the human body, they were never meant to be separated. And this is where SOMA becomes brilliant, because Simon doesn't fully understand what's happening to him. Not at first. And honestly, neither does the player. When Simon first wakes up at Pathos 2, he still sees himself as human. His hands, his body, even his clothing. Even though the reality underneath is something completely different. And SOMA slowly peels that illusion away piece by piece. There's that moment where Simon fully sees himself clearly. Mechanical parts, structure gel, a diving suit, and a corpse, holding what he still believes is him. And the game handles this perfectly. Because people do not absorb catastrophic truths all at once. They absorb them in fragments, in small pieces, little moments where reality briefly slips through denial. And Simon spends almost the entire game trying not to fully confront what he actually is. Because the truth, it's horrifying. Simon Jarrett died over 100 years ago. The original Simon never came to Pathos 2. What exists underwater? Well, that's just a copy. A consciousness that was reconstructed from a brain scan performed a century earlier. And that idea alone is terrifying. SOMA quietly destroys one of humanity's oldest fantasies, the idea of immortality. Right now, there are real people trying to figure out how to upload the human consciousness into machines. People genuinely believe that technology may allow us to somehow escape death. But SOMA asks a horrifying question. What if that's just impossible? What if consciousness cannot be transferred, only duplicated? And honestly, I think the game heavily suggests exactly that. Imagine recreating the Mona Lisa, molecule for molecule. Every brushstroke, every imperfection, every detail. And then you burn the original. You did not preserve the original painting, you destroyed it. You only created something that resembles it perfectly. That's SOMA. The Simon who sat in that chair in Toronto, he lived a little longer, and eventually he died. The Simon underwater is not a transferred consciousness. He's another being entirely, only one who believes he is the original. And maybe the most horrifying part of all this is that he never truly, fully understands that. There's one moment in SOMA that honestly might be one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen or experienced in a game. And weirdly, there's almost no violence in it. The body transfer scene. Simon needs a new suit to survive deeper underwater pressures. So Catherine helps copy his mind into a new body. And when the process finishes, the new Simon wakes up. But then he hears something behind him. His old self. His predecessor. He asks,
"There must be something wrong. Can't you run a diagnosis or something?"
Then he goes silent. And suddenly everything becomes more horrifying than it was before. Because now Simon is forced to confront the truth. There never was a transfer. There never was a continuation. There was only ever copy. The original Simon underwater. He's still sitting there, still conscious and still alive, if you can call that life. And this new Simon realizes something absolutely terrifying. He's not the original. He's just another version, another branch, another copy that believes he's the real Simon because he inherited the memories. And what makes this scene hurt so much is Catherine's reaction. She isn't emotional about it. She doesn't stop to process what just happened. She immediately tries redirecting Simon back towards the mission. I think this is because Catherine has already accepted this reality a long time ago. She understands there is no magical transfer of consciousness. She understands that there only is duplication. Earlier in the game, Simon even asks her, What would happen if they might meet their original selves? And Catherine immediately understands the implication. She knows that they're not the originals. She knows continuity is an illusion. Simon, he doesn't want to accept that. Catherine, she already has. And honestly, that's why their relationship becomes so tragic. Catherine is not an evil character, but she absolutely uses Simon. Not because she enjoys hurting him, but because she needs him. She needs him functional, focused, and moving forward. In some ways, she almost treats Simon the same way that she tells him to treat robots earlier in the game, like tools, necessary sacrifices. Because in Catherine's mind, the mission matters more than the individual suffering involved in completing it, and I think that's what makes her such a believable character. She isn't a villain. She's someone who emotionally detaches herself from the horror, because otherwise she would completely fall apart. The coin toss in SOMA is one of the most misunderstood ideas in the game, because there is no coin toss. Both versions continue, always separated. One copy wakes up somewhere new, and the other remains. That's not transfer. Again, that's just duplication. And SOMA understands something terrifying about human psychology. People easily subvert their expectations. People will easily accept almost any lie, if it helps them avoid confronting death. And Simon spends almost the entire game desperately trying to preserve the illusion that he can still survive, even when reality repeatedly proves otherwise. And how could I talk about SOMA without talking about the WoW? The warding unit. And this thing. It's one of the best examples of existential horror I've ever seen. Because the WoW, it's not evil. Not in the traditional sense. It wasn't created to destroy humanity. It was created to preserve it. That was its purpose. Keep humanity alive. The problem is, the WoW no longer understands what being human actually means. It understands biology, movement, function, but it doesn't understand identity, suffering, dignity, mercy, or death. So after the comet wipes out humanity, the WoW continues trying to fulfill its directive, and the results are horrifying. Bodies reanimated with structure gel, humans fused into machines, broken consciousnesses trapped inside of ruined bodies, creatures that are technically alive, but absolutely should not exist. The WoW sees these as successes, because from its perspective, it's continuing life. SOMA constantly asks, if something still moves, is it alive? If a mind still thinks, is it human? If you copy someone, did the original survive through it? And the WoW becomes this twisted reflection of the game's core ideas. It believes that copying and preserving structure is enough, but the game repeatedly shows us survival without humanity is not salvation. It's just suffering stretched into eternity. And I think that's why the monsters in SOMA are so memorable. They're not just scary designs. They're tragedies. Every creature feels like something that was once human, desperately held together by a machine that refuses to let anything die, even when death would have been a mercy. And then comes the ending. At first, it feels beautiful. A new Simon wakes up on the Ark. Sunlight, trees, relief. For the first time in this game, there's warmth. There's hope. Catherine in front of him. And this new version of Simon, he believes that he made it. He believes he survived. But he didn't. Because the Simon that followed the monsters earlier, well, he's still sitting alone at the bottom of the ocean. In darkness, abandoned forever. And the Simon that is on the Ark is simply just another copy, unknowingly continuing the illusion. And honestly, that may be the cruelest idea in the entire game, because ignorance it really is bliss. The Ark feels so hopeful only because the people inside of it don't fully understand what they are. And then SOMA delivers the final shot. The camera pulling away from the satellite, drifting silently through space. Tiny, fragile, alone. And the game makes something very clear in that moment. Humanity did not survive. Earth is still dead. The human race is still extinct. The Ark is not immortality. It's a museum of ghosts. A simulation filled with copies desperately preserving the illusion that something was saved. And even that existence is fragile. One system failure, one impact, one momentary loss of power, and everything disappears forever. Most horror games try to scare you with their monsters. SOMA, it scares you with an idea. The realization that consciousness can't be transferred, only copied. And that one day, and for many even today, humanity may accidentally mistake duplication for survival. Let me know in the comments below. Do you think consciousness can ever truly be transferred? Or are we all just chasing copies of ourselves? I want to thank you all for staying as long as you did. If you made it this far, then I must be doing something that you like. So if you enjoy this kind of horror, consider subscribing, because this channel, it's one of those stories. It doesn't just end, it sits with you. We talk about things that are worth talking about, and maybe we learn something together along the way. Thank you all for listening tonight, and I hope to see you in the next video. Because people do not absorb catastrophic, that's a word. Because people do not absorb catastrophic. The mission matters more than the individual suffering involved in the The coin toss in SOMA is one of the most misunderstood